Winter in Chicago had really shown its teeth that year. From my office on the 68th floor, I watched as snowflakes swirled down from a heavy gray sky, the icy wind off Lake Michigan slicing between the towering buildings like a blade. I stood by the window for a moment, soaking it in, then turned back to my desk, which was scattered with documents I still needed to review. Little reminders of past victories decorated the space. Awards from successful cases, a framed diploma from an elite law school, and a shiny plaque from the Chicago Legal Association that read, Female Lawyer of the Year. Being the youngest partner at Markham Reynolds wasn't something that just happened. I'd earned my place by grinding through years of corporate law with precision and relentless drive. That morning, I'd come in early to get a head start on prepping the final stretch of a class action suit against MTP Pharmaceuticals. My attention to detail and no-nonsense approach had earned me respect in the firm, even from people who didn't hand that out easily. "Ms. Morrison, you've got a call. It's your mother," came Jennifer's voice through the intercom. I raised an eyebrow. My mom hardly ever phoned the office during working hours. "Can you patch her through?" I said, letting out a soft sigh. "Evelyn, sweetheart, are you tied up?" My mom's voice came through warm and polished as always, though I caught a little excitement hiding in there. "I am, yeah. Trial prep for the MTP case next week," I said, eyes still on the pages in front of me. "Well, I've got something lovely to share," she said with the tone of someone unwrapping a gift. "Your father and I are heading to Hawaii next month, and we want you to come with us." I blinked. "Hawaii? Mom, my plate's kind of full right now." "I know, you're always busy," she said, her voice carrying that familiar touch of motherly guilt. "But time with family matters too, Evie. We haven't really connected in a while." I looked back out the window. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't seen them in months, even though they lived just a half hour up in Evanston. Between my overloaded schedule and their endless string of social events, our paths rarely crossed. "What about Brent?" I asked, thinking of my husband. "Oh, I did invite him," she replied, breezy as ever. "But he's swamped with work. I figured some girl time could be fun, right?" My fingers automatically reached for my wedding ring, twisting it slowly. On the surface, Brent and I seemed like the perfect couple, him a successful investment analyst, me a rising star in law. No kids, by mutual choice, so we could both chase our careers. Lately, though, it felt like we were orbiting each other more than actually connecting. "I'll ask Vanessa too," my mom added. "She might come. Hard to tell. She's juggling a bunch of things right now." Vanessa was my younger sister. She worked over at the local art museum, not far from our parents' place. She'd never moved out of the neighborhood, always staying close, both physically and emotionally. "Okay," I said, softening a little. "I'll think about it. Depends how the trial unfolds." When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. Lately, it felt like my life had turned into a constant back and forth between work and home. Brent and I barely talked anymore, and I honestly couldn't recall the last proper dinner we'd shared. Later that evening, I stepped into our apartment, and it was empty. Brent still hadn't made it back. I pulled a bottle of wine from the fridge and poured myself a glass, then walked over to the big living room window. The city skyline stretched out beneath me, cold and glittering. I thought about my mom's invitation. My parents, Victor and Martha, were thriving in their golden years. Dad had retired from his executive job at a major pharmaceutical company with more than enough to live on, thanks to smart investments. Mom had thrown herself into charity work and was a familiar face at just about every social event in Evanston. My phone buzzed. A text from Brent. "Running late. Don't wait up." I exhaled slowly, then typed out a reply to my mom. "All right, I'll come to Hawaii. Let me know the dates." The next morning, I walked into the senior partner's office and dropped my vacation request on his desk. George gave me a look but nodded. "It's been a while since you took any time off. Go ahead. We'll hold it down." Within a few days, the flights were booked and hotel reservations confirmed. When departure day rolled around, I met up with my parents at the airport. They were dressed head to toe in high-end travel gear and seemed a bit on edge, though they tried to act normal. "Okay, what are you two hiding?" I teased as we waited at the gate. "Nothing at all," my mom said a little too quickly, flashing that smile of hers. Just a nice little family getaway. But something about their vibe was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. Honolulu Airport was packed with tourists and humming with energy. The warm air wrapped around me like a blanket as I stepped off the plane, such a welcome change from the biting cold back home. Even though the flight had left me drained, I kept it together for my parents' sake. "Let's grab our bags," I said, steering them toward the escalator. Dad glanced at his watch. "No rush," he said calmly. That caught me off guard. My father, the man who'd always been a stickler for time, was suddenly in no hurry. On the way to baggage claim, I noticed Mom checking her phone over and over again. "Waiting on a call or something?" I asked, eyeing her with a raised brow. She quickly slid the phone into her purse like she'd been caught doing something sneaky. "Oh, just waiting on a confirmation email from the hotel," she said, a little too casually. Even after we grabbed our luggage and stepped into the arrival lobby, I could feel this odd tension lingering in the air around my parents. They seemed jittery, but I kept my thoughts to myself. And then I saw them. Right there in the middle of the lobby stood Brent, my husband, who was supposedly buried in work, and Vanessa, my sister. Brent was dressed like a tourist in full vacation mode, aloha shirt, khaki shorts, and a big grin. Vanessa wore a breezy floral dress, her skin already glowing with a tan that said she'd been here longer than a day. Both of them were waving like we were on a game show. "Surprise!" Vanessa called out, practically bouncing with excitement. I froze. Couldn't move. My feet might as well have been superglued to the floor. What are you two doing here?" I managed to ask. Brent came up and kissed my cheek. He smelled like citrus, different from his usual cologne. "Caught you off guard, huh?" he said. "We've been planning this all week. I handed off work to my team so we could do something special." Vanessa threw her arms around me, beaming. She looked like she'd been living the island life for days. My parents stood nearby, clearly thrilled with themselves. "Surprise!" Mom repeated, looking incredibly pleased. "The whole family all together for a little break." I was still trying to wrap my head around it, but I forced a smile. "Well, you definitely surprised me. But it's nice. It's really nice." On the drive to the resort, Dad played the role of tour guide, pointing out sights and rattling off facts about the island with the enthusiasm of a local. I sat in the back, wedged between Brent and Vanessa. And that's when I started noticing something strange. They kept trading quick glances over my head, sometimes whispering little things to each other. Nothing loud enough to catch, but just enough to make my skin prickle. "Tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day," Mom said cheerfully, not for the first time. "A special day, Evelyn." "What kind of special?" I asked, giving her a sideways look. She just smiled. "You'll see in the morning." At the hotel, we were checked into a luxurious ocean view suite, 2 bedrooms, one for Brent and me, and another for Vanessa. Mom and Dad had a separate room nearby. "I'm gonna hop in the shower," I said, dropping my bag on the bed. Brent was already at the window, staring out at the water like it held all the answers. Before heading to the bathroom, I peeked into Vanessa's room. She was on the phone, talking in a hushed voice. I caught a quick line before she turned away. "Tomorrow. Everything's set." Dinner that night was at the hotel's Hawaiian restaurant out on the terrace with a perfect view of Waikiki Beach glowing in the sunset. Everyone was in a good mood, too good. Vanessa especially. She was laughing more than usual, practically buzzing. "So, how's Chicago holding up?" she asked, swirling her wine. "Still drowning in casework?" "Yeah," I said, sipping my drink. "Big litigation coming up. But this trip, it's a nice break." "You're always working so hard," Mom chimed in. "But there's more to life than courtrooms and contracts, honey." Brent said nothing. Just downed his wine in one go and stared off at the horizon. There was tension in his jaw, even behind the calm face of his. "What's the plan for tomorrow?" I tried again. Dad smiled like a kid with a secret. "You'll see. Just meet us in the lobby at 9. Later that night, Brent and I sat out on the balcony, the stars twinkling above and waves crashing below. I turned to him. "Brent, is there something you're not telling me?" He took my hand. It felt shaky. "You'll find out tomorrow. It's a good thing. Promise." His eyes didn't meet mine. "We haven't really talked much lately," I said softly. "Are we okay?" "Of course," he replied a little too fast. "We're just both busy, that's all. You with the trial, me with work. Nothing more to it." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something didn't feel right. Later, I stopped by my parents' room to say goodnight. Mom answered the door. Inside, Dad was mid-conversation with Vanessa, but they both quieted up the second they saw me. "Just came to say goodnight," I told them, trying to read the room. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow." Dad got up and gave me a warm smile. "It's going to be a big day, sweetheart. Get some sleep." The next morning, As the sun painted golden light across the Waikiki shoreline, I was already wide awake. Brent lay beside me, sound asleep, his breathing steady and soft. Usually that sound calmed me, but today it made my chest feel tight. I slipped out of bed and stepped onto the balcony. The early breeze was warm and smelled like salt and hibiscus. Palm trees swayed gently, and the sound of the ocean rolled in steady waves. But inside, I couldn't shake this feeling. Something was coming, and I didn't know what. "You're up," Brent said behind me. I turned to see him already dressed. White linen shirt, beige pants, clean-shaven and looking like he was headed to an event. "I couldn't sleep," I said, brushing a hand through my hair. "I keep thinking about whatever this surprise is." He came over and rested his hand on my shoulder. It trembled just slightly. "You'll know soon enough," he said softly. "Could you start getting ready? We're meeting everyone at 9. I nodded and headed for the bathroom. After a quick shower, I put on a simple white summer dress. Standing in front of the mirror, I gathered my hair and stared at my reflection. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. You could read her life story in her eyes. The strength, the confidence, all the things she'd been through. But that morning, there was something else too. A flicker of worry she couldn't quite hide. Right on schedule, they all met down in the hotel lobby. Her parents were already there. Victor looked sharp in his navy suit, and Martha had picked a soft, classy pink dress. But Vanessa? She was nowhere to be found. "Morning, Evelyn," Martha said warmly, kissing her daughter's cheek. "Beautiful day," Evelyn replied, glancing around. "Where's Vanessa?" "She went on ahead," Martha said with a small smile. "She's waiting for us." Out front, a sleek black limo was parked, ready to take them wherever they were going. Inside, it was quiet. Her parents sat across from her, and Brent was next to her, barely saying a word. The ride itself was something out of a postcard. On one side, the ocean stretched out in deep blue waves, while the other side was all green hills and trees. "Where exactly are we headed?" Evelyn asked. "Soon, sweetheart," Martha said, gently squeezing her hand. "Just a little patience." About 20 minutes later, the limo rolled to a stop outside a small chapel by the beach. It was a charming little white building, surrounded by bursts of colorful flowers. The sound of the waves mixed with the salty scent of the sea air as they stepped out. "Why are we at a church?" Evelyn started to ask. But then she saw them. 2 figures were standing at the chapel's entrance. Brent and Vanessa. Both were dressed formally. Evelyn stopped in her tracks, confused. Brent? But hadn't he just been beside her in the car? She turned, and sure enough, Brent had already stepped away and was now walking toward Vanessa. Vanessa was wearing a plain but beautiful white dress that shimmered under the morning sun. "What the hell is going on?" Evelyn's voice cracked a little. Her father placed a steady hand on her shoulder and said quietly, "We're here for their wedding." Time seemed to stop. Evelyn stood frozen. "What did you just say?" she asked, barely believing it. Martha stepped up, took both of her hands in hers, and looked straight into her eyes. "Evelyn, please, try to understand. Your sister's pregnant. We think it's time for you to let go of Brent." Evelyn let out a short, stunned laugh. The kind you give when you're sure someone's pulling your leg. But the look on their faces told her otherwise. Brent's eyes were full of guilt, but it was that soft kind. Like he was sorry she had to find out, not sorry it happened. Vanessa, on the other hand, was practically glowing. "You're saying my husband and my sister have been sneaking around. She's pregnant, and I'm just supposed to sign the divorce papers and smile?" Her voice had found its strength again. "Affair is such a strong word," Vanessa said, stepping closer. She gave a light, almost playful laugh. "Come on, sis. You'd do this for me, wouldn't you?" Evelyn stared at her. That look, that greedy little spark in Vanessa's eyes, it had always been there. Vanessa had wanted everything Evelyn had, ever since they were kids. And usually, she got it. Brent just stood there. No defense, no denial, just a faint smile that looked more like relief than remorse. "What even is this?" Evelyn asked, not really to anyone, more to the situation itself. Brent finally spoke, clearing his throat like he was delivering a speech. Things between us haven't been right for a while. You're always so caught up in work. We've grown apart. And I was there for him. Vanessa jumped in, her voice proud, like she was doing Evelyn a favor. We've been together for over a year now. We love each other. Her parents nodded along, like this all made perfect sense. Victor spoke gently. As a family, we believe this is what's best for everyone. Best? Evelyn repeated, stunned. You're calling this the best? My husband cheats, my sister gets knocked up, and I'm the one expected to be understanding. The air around them turned heavy. Her hair danced in the wind, and from the distance, chapel bells chimed. Then something shifted inside her. That sharp, blazing anger she felt? It flared up, then just disappeared, leaving a strange, cold calm behind. She straightened up, gave a small smile, and said, all right. Just, don't regret it. They were caught off guard by her reaction. Brent looked puzzled. Wait, seriously? Just like that? If that's what you all want, Evelyn said with a shrug, then there's not much else for me to say. Martha stepped closer, unsure now. Evelyn, are you okay? Perfect, Mom, she replied, gently pulling away. You guys go ahead and finish the wedding stuff. I need a minute to clear my head. She turned to leave the chapel, paused in the doorway as if she had something more to say, then just smiled instead. I'll take a walk by the water. You have a ceremony to plan, remember? As she disappeared down the path toward the beach, the others exchanged uneasy glances. Vanessa let out a shaky laugh. Well, that went smoother than I thought. I'm not so sure, Martha muttered, eyes fixed on Evelyn's silhouette through the window. She's not done. I can feel it. Brent pulled at his tie and let out a long breath. She's a lawyer. Always collected, always thinking. Maybe she just accepted it. Victor didn't say a word. He just kept looking through the glass, watching his daughter walk away. He'd seen that look before, in boardrooms, negotiations, courtrooms. Evelyn hadn't given up. She was preparing for her next move. I knew it. Deep down, I was sure. I walked along the shoreline, waves brushing my feet, and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. Actually, I felt more focused than I had in a long time. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Jim? It's Evelyn Morrison. I need your help. On the other end, I heard the voice of Jim Hartman, an old friend and private investigator back in Chicago. What's going on, Evelyn? I don't have much time. There's something I need you to handle, and it can't wait, I said, my eyes still on the endless blue of the ocean. As I walked, I laid it all out for him. Quick, clear, and straight to the point. I told him everything. What had happened. What I was planning. He stayed quiet most of the time, asking a few questions here and there. When I was done, he said, all right. I'm on it. Be careful, Evelyn. Thanks, Jim. Really. After I ended the call, I took a slow breath. On the outside, the island was peaceful, sun above, sea all around. But inside me? A storm was brewing. Still, right in the eye of that storm, I felt completely in control. I opened my contacts again and tapped another number. David? It's me. I've got an emergency. David Clark, my law partner back in Chicago, picked up right away. Evelyn? What's wrong? Aren't you in Hawaii? Yeah, I'm here. But things took a turn. I need backup. I gave him the full rundown, no sugarcoating it. He went silent for a second, then said, Good Lord. What are you gonna do? He asked. Justice, I told him. And I'm going to make damn sure they regret what they did. Later that evening, the chapel was glowing in warm orange light as the sun began to set. A soft breeze came in from the ocean, rustling the flowers near the altar. There weren't many guests, mostly friends of my parents or Vanessa's crowd. I sat in the back, alone. I hadn't gone back to the hotel after everything that morning. I just needed time to think. When my mom spotted me, she looked almost relieved. Vanessa was still getting ready, tucked away in the dressing room. Brent stood nervously at the front, fiddling with the rings. The organ music started up and Vanessa came in on my father's arm, grinning like she was living some dream. Victor looked proud, walking his daughter down the aisle. I just sat there, quiet, watching. My face gave away nothing. The seat next to me stayed empty. The priest began his speech. We're gathered here today to celebrate the union of Brent Morrison and Vanessa Levin. It all moved quickly. Vows. Rings. Smiles. But then the moment came. If anyone here has any objections to this marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. Then I stood up. Every head turned. Vanessa's smile dropped and Brent looked like the blood drained from his face. My parents shifted nervously. I object, I said. Calm. Clear. Every word echoed through the chapel. The priest looked confused. What is the reason for your objection? I held up my phone. I have something I think everyone should hear. I gave a nod toward the door. Right then, David Clark stepped inside, carrying a pair of portable speakers. "This is my colleague, David Clark," I said, introducing him as he walked to the front. He gave a polite nod and started setting things up. Vanessa's voice shook. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" I didn't even look at her. "Just telling the truth." I tapped play on my phone. Their voices, Brent and Vanessa, filled the room. "Evelyn's got a lot of assets. The only way to get our hands on her inheritance is through divorce," Brent's voice said. "Let's get Dad and Mom on board," Vanessa added. "They'll act like they care about her and bring her here. She probably won't go along with it at first." "It'll work," Brent replied. "Once we tell her I got you pregnant, she'll back off. Evelyn always does the right thing." Vanessa laughed. "What about Karen? Are you still seeing her?" "Karen's just a fling. I'll break it off. Once we're married and I get Evelyn's money, everything will fall into place." The recording ended. The silence afterward was deafening. Vanessa gripped the altar like she was about to collapse. Brent didn't move. Just stared blankly. I took a step forward and spoke again, calm and steady. "I actually found out Brent was cheating 8 months ago. I just didn't know who with." I held up an envelope and pulled out a stack of photos. With a little help from a trusted investigator and a lawyer's instincts, I said, "I've gathered plenty of evidence." I laid the photos out. Brent and another woman, very much not Vanessa, tangled up together in a hotel room. Dated 2 weeks ago. Vanessa turned ghost white and whipped around to face him. "You said you broke up with Karen," she shouted. Brent stuttered. "Vanessa, I can explain." "No need," I cut in. "The divorce papers have already been filed." I turned to Brent. "You're out. You're not getting a dime." Then I looked at my parents. "And you too? You backed the child who threw away her own sister and a man who was lying to both of us. I hope it was worth it." Martha's eyes welled up. "Evelyn, we were just trying to make Vanessa happy." "That's a lie," I interrupted my mother's tears. "You knew about Vanessa and Brent's affair even with her being pregnant. My feelings didn't matter to you." Victor's head hung low. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he looked old. Like the weight of the world had fallen on him. I turned to Vanessa. "I don't know if your pregnancy is real, but I'm sure of one thing: Brent doesn't deserve to be a father. He's a cheater and not faithful to you, either." Vanessa broke down in tears, pulling away from Brent. "I really am pregnant," she sobbed. "Well, then, for the sake of your child, you should reconsider," I said. "Your choices come with responsibilities." I nodded to David and we began walking down the aisle. As I reached the door, I paused, turned around, and spoke one last time. To Brent, Vanessa, and my parents. "Don't forget today. Honesty and trust, once broken, are the hardest things to get back, especially among family." With that, I left the chapel, walking with dignity. David followed me and we made our way to the waiting limousine. Inside was Jim Hartman, the private investigator I'd called earlier. "You did it perfectly, Evelyn," David said, admiring me. "You stayed so calm." "This isn't over," I replied, gazing out the window. "But it's enough for now." The limousine started its journey toward Honolulu. I pulled out my phone and checked my emails. There were several urgent messages from the office, but I couldn't care less right now. Jim spoke up. "Where to?" "Take me to the airport," I sighed. "It's time to go home." David raised an eyebrow. "Don't you still have time left here?" "My business here is done," I smiled. "And I'm ready to start a new life." The limousine drove through Hawaii's twilight streets, and a quiet resolve settled in me. I had rediscovered my own worth, and despite everything that had happened, I felt stronger now. The betrayal had given me new strength. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and purple, I looked out at the beautiful landscape and felt a deep peace. 1 year later, Chicago was in full bloom. The cherry blossoms were in their prime by Lake Michigan, and the whole city seemed full of energy. On the 45th floor of a high-rise building, I sat in my office with a huge glass window overlooking Michigan Avenue. I had just finished a call. "Yes, the contract looks good. Please sign and return it," I said, hanging up. I turned my chair to face the view, enjoying the sight of the city. On the wall behind me was the new logo of E. Morrison Women's Advocacy. 6 months after that day in Hawaii, I had left my old firm and started my own business, focusing on supporting women's rights, especially those struggling with divorce and domestic issues. The media had noticed my efforts and the firm was gaining attention. As I was sitting there, David knocked and peeked his head inside. "Lunch is ready," he smiled. David had also resigned from our old firm and was now my business partner. Over the past year, our relationship had grown. He respected my strength and integrity, and I had come to admire his kindness and sincerity. Meanwhile, things hadn't gone well for Brent and Vanessa. Their marriage didn't last long. Vanessa's pregnancy had been real, but after their son Noah was born, Brent showed zero interest in parenting. It wasn't long before people found out he was seeing other women, and Vanessa filed for divorce 7 months into the marriage. Financially struggling, Vanessa moved back in with our parents, raising Noah with their help. Victor and Martha were starting to realize their mistakes, though they adored their grandson. Still, they couldn't shake the guilt whenever they saw Vanessa's situation. They even sent me an apology letter at Christmas, but I never responded. On my desk was an unopened envelope that had arrived that morning. It was from Vanessa. I wasn't ready to open it yet. At lunch, I mentioned the envelope to David. "Why don't you open it?" he suggested gently. "Whatever's in there, you're stronger now." Back in my office, I took a deep breath and carefully opened it. Inside was a letter along with a photo of Noah. The letter began, "To my sister, you were right. I left Brent. Now I want to be strong for myself and my child. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I hope one day we can talk again." I stared at the letter for a long moment. Then I wrote my reply, "It's never too late to become strong, but it takes time to regain trust." I also let her know I had set up a trust fund for Noah's college education, a gift for my nephew. Looking out the window, I smiled. I had learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about honesty and mutual respect. And now I was surrounded by people who truly valued me. Though the pain of the past would always be with me, I was moving forward. The sunlight streaming into my office seemed to reflect the beginning of a new season.